The council chamber floated in the void of space, a massive structure of crystal and metal that caught the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from 43 different species sat in their designated sections. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few existed as clouds of intelligent gas contained in special chambers. They had gathered for what they believed would be a simple vote. Another day of galactic politics. Ambassador Ji-won Kim stood alone in the human section. She was a small woman by human standards, dressed in a simple gray suit. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her face showed no emotion as she listened to the accusations being thrown at her species. She had heard it all before during the past 3 months of debate. Councillor Vex Thor rose from his seat, his reptilian body covered in green scales that shimmered under the chamber lights. He was old, perhaps 300 years by human counting, and he carried himself with the pride of someone who had never been challenged. His voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke. "The humans have expanded too quickly," he said, his clawed hand gesturing at a holographic display showing human colonies. "In just 200 years, they have claimed 30 systems. They build ships faster than any species we have seen. Their technology advances at a rate that concerns us all. We must act before they become a threat to galactic peace." Other councillors nodded in agreement. The insectoid High Arbiter Kil Nara clicked her mandibles together, a sign of approval in her species. She had ruled the council for 600 years and had seen many species rise and fall. To her ancient eyes, humanity looked like every other aggressive young race that needed to be controlled. Ji-won said nothing. She simply stood and waited. This was not the time for arguments. The decision had already been made in private meetings before this session. This public vote was just a formality, a way for the council to feel democratic about their choice. The accusations continued. Humans were too ambitious. Humans asked too many questions. Humans didn't respect the old ways. Human scientists published too many research papers. Human merchants were too good at trading. Human doctors saved too many lives on non-human worlds, making those worlds dependent on human medicine. What the council didn't say, but what Ji-won understood perfectly, was that they were afraid. Humanity had done nothing wrong. They had followed every law, signed every treaty, and helped every species that asked. But they had done it all too well. And that scared the older races. The vote came quickly. 38 species voted in favor of the new restrictions. Only 5 voted against, mostly younger species who had worked closely with humans. The restrictions were severe. Humans could claim no new systems. Human ships would need council permission to travel through most of space. Human technology would be reviewed and approved before use. Human trade would be limited to prevent economic dominance. When the vote finished, all eyes turned to Ji-won. They expected anger, maybe threats, perhaps even tears. Young species usually reacted with emotion when the council pushed them down. It was normal, expected, almost a rite of passage. Instead, Ji-won simply bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement. She tapped a small device on her wrist, and her voice was broadcast to every corner of the chamber. "The Republic of Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for their guidance," she said, her voice calm and clear. "We understand your concerns, and will comply fully with your wishes. We will begin withdrawal from council space immediately. We wish you all peace and prosperity." That was it. No protest, no appeal, no dramatic speech about justice or fairness. Ji-won collected her data pad, bowed once more to the High Arbiter, and walked out of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Councillor Vex Thor felt a strange unease. He had expected a fight, had prepared arguments for human resistance. This quiet acceptance felt wrong somehow, like winning a battle that was never fought. Within 12 hours, human ships began moving. Every human vessel in council space received the same simple order: return home. No explanations were given to alien crews who worked alongside humans. No warnings were sent to colonies that depended on human trade. The humans simply began leaving. Captain Hyun Park stood on the bridge of his patrol ship near the Kepler 442b mining colony. He was a tall man, with graying hair, and the tired eyes of someone who had spent 30 years in space. He read the withdrawal order 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. "Sir, what about the colony?" his first officer asked. "We've been protecting their mining operations for 5 years. The pirate clans will attack within a week of our departure." Hyun looked at the planet on his main screen. He knew every defense station, every patrol route, every weakness in the colony's security. His crew had stopped 14 pirate raids in the past year alone. The colony administrator had personally thanked him just last month. "We follow orders," Hyun said quietly. "Send a message to the colony. Tell them we're being recalled. Offer to brief their security team on current threats before we leave." The colony administrator, a being named Thalrix, responded with confusion and concern. Why were the humans leaving? Had they done something wrong? Could the humans stay just a bit longer? Hyun explained about the council vote and the restrictions. He offered all the intelligence data his crew had gathered, all the tactical information about pirate movements, all the codes to the defense satellites humans had installed around the colony. Thalrix accepted it all, but still didn't understand why the humans were really leaving. Across council space, similar scenes played out. Human doctors finished their shifts at alien hospitals and quietly packed their bags. Human engineers uploaded instruction manuals for the systems they had built and maintained. Human teachers said goodbye to their alien students. Human merchants settled their debts and closed their shops. There was no anger, no sabotage, no spite. Humans simply fulfilled their current obligations and left. They didn't take anything that wasn't theirs. They didn't demand payment for services rendered. They just went home. Within 72 hours, 90% of humans had left council space. The remaining 10% would be gone within a week, finishing up critical medical procedures or ensuring safe handovers of important systems. In the council chamber, Vex Thor watched the display showing human ship movements. Every vessel was moving in orderly fashion toward human territory. No chaos, no threats, no resistance. Just silent, efficient departure. "They accepted their place quickly," he said to the High Arbiter. "Perhaps we worried for nothing." Kilnara clicked her mandibles. But this time it was not approval. It was uncertainty. In her 600 years, she had seen many species react to council restrictions. None had ever responded like this. The humans were too calm, too organized, too accepting, but she said nothing. The humans were leaving peacefully. That was what the council wanted. She told herself that everything would be fine. She was very, very wrong. 3 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. Governor Thalrix sat in his office on Kepler 442b, staring at reports that made his head hurt. The mining colony had operated smoothly for 20 years. Now, everything seemed to be falling apart at once. The first problem had been the pirates. They came exactly 1 week after Captain Hyun's ship departed, just as the human had predicted. 3 small raider vessels attacked a mining transport carrying valuable crystals. The colony's defense fleet responded, but they were slow and uncoordinated. By the time they arrived, the pirates had taken the cargo and disappeared. Thalrix had ordered his security chief to review the tactical data Captain Hyun had left behind. The security chief, a warrior from a proud species, had thrown up his hands in frustration. The data was too complex, too detailed. It covered pirate clan movements going back 5 years, predicted attack patterns, listed known pirate bases, and outlined response strategies for every possible scenario. The humans were watching everything, the security chief had said. They knew where every pirate ship was, what weapons they carried, even which clans were fighting each other. How did they gather all this information? Thalrix didn't know. He had never asked. The humans had simply protected the trade routes, and everyone had assumed it was easy for them. Now he understood that Captain Hyun and his crew must have spent thousands of hours tracking pirate movements, analyzing patterns, and maintaining an intelligence network that the colony didn't even know existed. More pirate attacks followed. The raiders seemed to know that the humans were gone. In 3 months, the colony lost more cargo than it had lost in the previous 5 years combined. Insurance costs tripled. 2 mining crews refused to go out without better protection. Production dropped by 30%. But the pirates were just the beginning of Thalrix's problems. The environmental systems in the colony's main dome started malfunctioning. The temperature fluctuated wildly, and the air filters began producing a strange smell. Thalrix called in his maintenance team. "It's the central regulator," the chief engineer reported. "It's a human-designed system. We don't have anyone trained to fix it properly." Thalrix pulled up the records. A human engineer named Kwon Sung had maintained the environmental systems for 8 years. He had filed reports every month, detailed technical documents that the colony administrators had filed away without reading. Kwon had upgraded the systems 3 times, always improving efficiency and reliability. The colony had paid him a standard salary and never thought much about his work. Now Kwon was gone, and the systems he had maintained were breaking down. The chief engineer tried to follow the instruction manual Kwon had left behind, but it assumed a level of technical knowledge that none of the colony's workers possessed. They managed to keep the systems running at basic level, but the efficiency dropped by 40%. Energy costs increased dramatically. Similar problems were appearing across council space. On the agricultural world of Harvest 7, crop yields fell by half. The council administrator there discovered that human agronomists had been advising farmers for 15 years, sharing techniques for soil treatment and pest control. The humans had never asked for payment or recognition. They had simply helped because the farmers asked questions, and the humans knew the answers. Medical shipments became unreliable. The shipping companies had always depended on human cargo vessels to handle the most critical deliveries. Human ships were always on time, always reliable, and their captains knew every route through difficult space. With the humans gone, important medicines arrived, late or not at all. A plague broke out on a station near the border, and the vaccines arrived 3 days too late. 200 people died. Communication between council worlds became spotty. It turned out that humans had maintained a network of relay stations throughout council space. They had built them quietly over the years, always asking permission, but never explaining how important they were. The humans had kept the relay stations running for free, considering it a public service. Now, with no one maintaining them, the stations began to fail one by one. Messages that once took hours, now took days. Merchant Lord Drahl, an avian trader who had worked closely with humans, stood before the council and delivered a report that shocked everyone. His feathers were ruffled with stress, and his voice was sharp with worry. The humans represented 60% of interstellar trade volume, he said. Not because they were the largest species, but because they were the most reliable. They connected markets, transported goods no one else wanted to carry, and maintained trade routes through dangerous space. With them gone, the entire galactic economy is contracting. Councillor Vex's Thor dismissed his concerns. The market will adjust. Other species will fill the gap. But 3 months later, no one had filled the gap. Human merchants had worked on thin profit margins, charging just enough to keep their ships running. They had valued reputation over profit, relationships over short-term gain. Other species tried to take over human trade routes, but they charged more, delivered slower, and didn't have the same networks of trust that humans had built over decades. The council began receiving distress calls they couldn't answer. A research station lost power and needed emergency supplies. The council sent a ship, but it arrived 4 days late. By then, 3 scientists had died from exposure. A colony ship carrying 10,000 settlers broke down in deep space. They called for help and waited. A human rescue ship would have reached them in 2 days. The council's rescue vessel took 6 days. The colonists survived, but they would remember the fear. High Arbiter Kilnara reviewed the reports in her private chamber. She was old and wise, but she had made a mistake. She had thought of humans as another ambitious young species that needed to be controlled. She had not understood what they actually did. The humans had been everywhere, doing everything, and asking for almost nothing in return. They had protected, maintained, transported, healed, taught, and built. They had done it so quietly and efficiently that no one had noticed. They were like the air itself, invisible, but essential. Kilnara pulled up footage from the past decade. She watched humans working in a dozen different places. A human doctor treating plague victims on a poor world. A human engineer fixing a water purifier on a mining station. A human teacher explaining mathematics to alien children. A human merchant delivering food to a famine-stricken colony at cost. In every case, the humans had simply helped. They hadn't demanded praise or power. They had seen problems and solved them. When thanked, they had smiled and said it was no trouble. The galaxy had taken their help for granted. Now the galaxy was learning what it meant to live without humans. Systems were breaking down. Trade was collapsing. Security was failing. People were dying. And it had only been 3 months. Vex Thor refused to admit the problem. "These are temporary adjustments," he told the council. "We managed for thousands of years before humans arrived. We will manage again." But younger counselors were not so sure. They had grown up in a galaxy where humans were always present, always helpful, always reliable. They had never known a time without human assistance. Now they were seeing the cracks appear, and they were afraid. Counselor Sora Yoon, a young member from a species that had been saved from extinction by human medical intervention, stood before the council. She had been raised partly on Earth and understood humans better than most. "We made a mistake," she said quietly. "The humans were never trying to dominate us. They were just being themselves. And we punished them for it." Vex Thor glared at her. "They were expanding too quickly. They were becoming too powerful. They were helping too much," Sora corrected. "And we were too proud to see it." The argument went nowhere. The council was divided. Half wanted to admit the mistake and ask the humans to return. Half insisted that the problems were temporary and that the council's pride mattered more than practical concerns. Meanwhile, the cracks continued to widen, and in the silence of space, no human ships came to help repair them. 8 months after the human departure, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. The cracks had become canyons. The problems had become catastrophes. And still, some counselors refused to admit what everyone else could see clearly. The plague that started on a single border station had spread to 14 worlds. It was not a particularly deadly disease by galactic standards, but it was highly contagious and caused severe illness. In the past, human doctors would have contained it within days. Dr. Mira Choi had been the galaxy's leading expert on cross-species infectious diseases. She had published over 200 papers and trained thousands of alien medical students. Now Dr. Choi was gone, along with every other human medical expert. The council's own doctors tried to stop the plague, but they didn't have the knowledge or the coordination. Human doctors had maintained a galaxy-wide medical database, sharing information instantly across thousands of light years. They had developed protocols for quarantine that worked across different species and cultures. They had been the glue holding the galactic health system together. Without them, the plague spread like fire. Millions fell ill. Thousands died. The council sent medical ships, but they arrived too late or went to the wrong places. There was no coordination, no central authority, no one who understood how to manage a crisis across multiple species and star systems. Merchant Lord Draal watched his trading empire collapse. He had built his fortune working alongside human merchants, learning from their methods and benefiting from their networks. Now those networks were gone, and he was drowning in debt. His ships sat empty in docks because there was no cargo to carry. The routes he had relied on were now too dangerous or too unprofitable. He was not alone. Across the galaxy, businesses that had depended on human trade were failing. The economic contraction that started as a concern had become a full depression. Unemployment rose. Food prices tripled. Luxury goods disappeared from markets. Colonies that had imported everything now faced shortages of basic supplies. The council tried to organize relief efforts, but they discovered something disturbing. They didn't actually know how to run the galaxy's logistics. For decades, humans had been the ones coordinating cargo movements, maintaining shipping schedules, and ensuring that goods flowed from producers to consumers. They had done it so efficiently that no one else had bothered to learn. Now cargo ships sat in wrong ports, waiting for instructions that never came. Food rotted in warehouses, while hungry colonies waited for deliveries. Medical supplies expired unused because no one knew where they were needed most. The council had the resources, but lacked the knowledge to use them effectively. Military problems added to the chaos. A border dispute between two council species escalated into open warfare. In the past, human peacekeepers would have intervened. Not with force, but with mediation. Ambassador Do Yun Han had been famous for resolving conflicts before they became violent. He had a gift for finding compromise, for making both sides feel heard and respected. Do Yun was gone now, back in human space. The council tried to mediate the conflict themselves, but they were clumsy and biased. The fighting intensified. Ships were destroyed. Colonies were bombarded. Thousands died in a war that should never have happened. High Arbiter Kilnara barely slept anymore. Her ancient body was failing under the stress. She spent her days reading reports of cascading failures, each one worse than the last. She had lived for 600 years and governed the council for most of that time. She had always believed in the council's wisdom, in the rightness of their decisions. Now she was not so sure. She pulled up old security footage and watched humans at work throughout council space. She saw patterns she had never noticed before. Humans didn't just do their assigned jobs. They fixed things that weren't their responsibility. They helped people they weren't paid to help. They taught skills they could have kept secret. They built systems and then gave them away for free. In one video, she watched a human engineer named Quan Sung repair a water purifier on a mining station. He finished the official repair in an hour, but then he spent 3 more hours upgrading the system and teaching the station's crew how to maintain it. He did this without charging extra, without being asked. When the crew thanked him, he had simply smiled and said that proper maintenance would save them trouble later. Chilnara realized something that made her feel cold inside. Humans didn't help because they wanted power or recognition. They helped because they believed it was the right thing to do. They saw problems and felt compelled to solve them. It was built into their culture, their psychology, maybe their very nature. The council had interpreted this helpfulness as a threat. They had seen human competence and assumed it was a prelude to domination. They had looked at humanity's rapid growth and feared conquest. They had completely misunderstood everything. Councillor Vexthor still refused to admit error. He stood before the council and blamed everyone except himself. The plague was the result of poor quarantine by border worlds. The economic collapse was a natural market correction. The war was inevitable given old grievances between the species involved. None of it was the council's fault for driving away humanity, but his voice was hollow now. Fewer councillors listened to him. More and more were asking the question that Kilnara dreaded. Should we ask the humans to come back? The answer was not simple. Some councillors argued that the galaxy needed human help desperately. Others said that begging humans to return would be humiliating and would make humanity too powerful. A few, like Vexus Thor, still insisted that the problems would resolve themselves given time. Councillor Sora Yoon stood before the council and spoke the truth that many were thinking. "We are dying," she said simply. "Our economy is collapsing. Our people are sick. Our conflicts are escalating. And every single problem could be solved if we had not driven away the humans. They were becoming too powerful. Vex Thor repeated his old argument, but it sounded weak now. They were helping too much, Sora replied. We punished them for being competent and generous. We feared their strength and ignored their character. We were fools. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some agreed with Sora. Others defended the original decision. Still, others proposed compromise positions that satisfied no one. Hours passed in circular debate, while the galaxy continued to fall apart. Finally, Kilnara raised her hand for silence. The ancient arbiter's authority still carried weight, and the counselors quieted. She had made a decision that pained her deeply, but pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. We will send envoys to human space, she announced. We will request humanitarian assistance for the plague. We will ask for technical advisors to help restore our infrastructure. We will invite human merchants to resume trade. We will do this not as a negotiation between equals, but as suppliants requesting aid. Vex Thor stood in protest. This is humiliation. We will look weak. We are weak, Kilnara said quietly. The humans showed us how weak we truly are. Without them, we cannot even maintain what we have, let alone grow. The question is whether we are wise enough to admit it. The vote was close, but it passed. The council would send envoys to request human help. They would offer favorable trade terms, technology sharing, anything the humans wanted. They would beg, if necessary. But as the meeting ended and the counselors departed, Kilnara felt a deep unease. The humans had left so quietly, so completely. They had not looked back, had not sent messages, had not appeared to care what happened to council space. What if they refused to help? What if they had moved on and built their own civilization, one that didn't need or want the council? What if humanity had learned to live without them? Just as the council was failing to live without humanity. She would find out soon. The envoys would depart within days. They would travel to human space and request an audience with whoever governed humanity now. They would ask for help and hope that humans were as generous as they had always seemed. But hope was a fragile thing, and Kilnara had very little of it left. 14 months after the departure, the council envoys entered human space for the first time since the Exodus. High Arbiter Kilnara led the delegation herself, accompanied by Counselor Sora Yoon and a reluctant Vex's Thor. They traveled in a council diplomatic vessel, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. They were met at the border by Captain Hyun Park's fleet. The human ships appeared on their sensors with military precision, surrounding the council vessel in a defensive formation. Kilnara felt her hearts beat faster. This could go very wrong very quickly. Then Captain Hyun's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. Council vessel. You are entering the sovereign space of the Republic of Humanity. Please, state your purpose. Kilnara responded herself. This is High Arbiter Kilnara of the Galactic Council. We request an audience with human leadership to discuss matters of mutual importance. There was a pause. Then Captain Hyun responded. Please follow our escort ships. We will guide you to the diplomatic station at Novaterra. Welcome to human space. The tension eased slightly. At least the humans were willing to talk. The council vessel followed the escort, and Kilnara watched through the viewports as they traveled deeper into human territory. What she saw astonished her. Human space was thriving. The colonies they passed were clean and orderly, with efficient infrastructure and bustling commerce. Space stations glowed with lights and activity. Cargo vessels moved in organized patterns. Everything hummed with quiet prosperity. This was not what Kilnara had expected. She had thought the humans might be struggling without access to council markets and technology. Instead, they appeared to have built a completely self-sufficient civilization in just over a year. How was that possible? They docked at Novaterra, a massive station that served as humanity's diplomatic hub. As Kilnara and her delegation disembarked, They were met by Ambassador Ji-won Kim. She looked exactly as she had 14 months ago, calm and professional in her simple gray suit. "Hi, Arbiter," Ji-won said with a respectful bow. "It has been some time. Please, follow me." She led them through the station, and Kilnara couldn't help but notice the details. The corridors were spotless. The air was fresh. People of various human ethnicities moved with purpose and confidence. There were no signs of poverty, no evidence of struggle. If anything, the humans looked more prosperous than they had in council space. They entered a conference room where other human representatives waited. Captain Hyun was there, now wearing a formal uniform. Dr. Mira Choi sat at the table, along with several other humans Kilnara recognized from council space. They all rose and bowed respectfully. But there was something different in their manner. They were polite, but not deferential. They acted like equals, meeting equals, not subordinates greeting superiors. Ji-won gestured for the council delegation to sit. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Can we offer you refreshments? We have foods suitable for all your species." They accepted water and simple foods. Then Kilnara began to speak, and the words were harder than anything she had said in her 600 years. "We come to request your help," she said simply. "Council space is suffering. A plague spreads unchecked. Our economy has collapsed. Infrastructure fails daily. We lack the expertise to manage these crises. We need human assistance." Ji-won listened without expression. When Kilnara finished, the ambassador nodded slowly. The question was gentle but pointed. Vex Thor bristled, but Kilnara raised a hand to silence him. "This was not the time for pride. Because you always have before," Kilnara said. "Because helping those in need seems to be fundamental to human nature. Because, despite how we treated you, I believe you are better than we are." And, Ji-won's expression softened slightly. "You are correct that helping comes naturally to us. But you asked us to leave, High Arbiter. You restricted our growth, limited our freedom, and made it clear that our presence was unwelcome. We respected your wishes and departed. Why should we return?" Counselor Sora Yoon spoke up. "Because people are dying. Because the mistakes of the council should not condemn billions of innocent people. Because you are capable of helping, and that ability comes with responsibility." Dr. Mira Choi smiled sadly at that. "That is exactly the argument the council used to restrict us. They said our capabilities made us responsible for staying within limits they set. Now you use the same logic to argue we are responsible for saving you. Do you see the contradiction?" The room fell silent. The council delegation had no good answer. Finally, Kilnara spoke again. "We were wrong. We feared your strength and your rapid growth. We interpreted your helpfulness as a strategy for domination. We completely misunderstood you." Captain Hyun leaned forward. "Did you? Or did you understand us perfectly and resent what you saw?" Kilnara looked at him in confusion. Hyun continued. "We helped because it was right. We shared because we had plenty. We protected because we were able. We never asked for power or recognition, but our mere presence made the council look inefficient by comparison. We solved problems that the council had ignored for centuries. That was the real threat. Was it not? Not that we would conquer you, but that we would reveal how much you had failed your own people." Vex's Thor stood angrily. "How dare you? Sit down," Kilnara commanded, her voice sharp. Vex Thor sat, shocked by her tone. She turned back to the humans. "Captain Hyun is correct. We feared not your weapons but your competence. We resented not your ambition but your effectiveness. You made us look bad simply by being good." Ji-won nodded. "Thank you for your honesty, High Arbiter. Now I will be honest with you. The humans who served in council space did so out of genuine desire to help. They were engineers who saw broken systems and wanted to fix them. Doctors who saw sick people and wanted to heal them. Teachers who saw ignorance and wanted to educate. They expected nothing in return. She paused, and her voice became firmer. But when the council voted to restrict us, you told those humans that their help was not valued. You told them that their competence was threatening. You told them to go away. So they did. And they came home and built this. She gestured around at the prosperous station. We built a civilization that doesn't need you. We are happy here. We are free here. Why would we return to a place that rejected us? Kilnara felt despair settle over her. The humans were not refusing out of spite. They were simply choosing their own happiness over the council's needs. It was perfectly reasonable, and it was devastating. Sora Yun tried one more approach. What if things were different? What if humans had a voice in council decisions? What if you were treated as equals? Jiwan looked at her colleagues, and something passed between them silently. Then she stood and walked to a wall panel, activating a holographic display. It showed a memorial on Earth, a massive wall covered in names. Do you know what this is? Jiwan asked. Kilnara looked at the thousands upon thousands of names. No. These are the humans who died serving council space over the past 50 years. Engineers who died in accidents maintaining alien infrastructure. Doctors who died treating plague victims. Security officers killed by pirates while protecting alien merchants. Teachers who gave their lives defending alien students. Over 8,000 names. The council never knew. The room was silent. Kilnara felt something break inside her. All those deaths, all that sacrifice, and the council had never noticed. They had taken human help for granted to the point of not even counting the cost. Jiwan continued quietly. We didn't tell you because we didn't help for recognition. But now, you need to understand what you lost. You lost people who would die for strangers. You lost a civilization that measured success by how much it could give, not how much it could take. You lost us. Can we earn you back? Kilnara asked, her voice breaking. Jiwan sat down again and looked directly at the High Arbiter. That depends. Are you offering partnership or asking for servants? Do you want us as equals or as convenient helpers? Will you treat us with respect or with fear? Equals, Kilnara said immediately. Full council membership with veto power. Complete sovereignty over human space. All rights and privileges of the founding species. This, I can promise. Jiwan looked at her colleagues again. They nodded slightly. Then we will consider it, she said. But you must understand that if we return, it will be on our terms. We will help because we choose to, not because you demand it. We will serve the people of the galaxy, not the council that governs them. And if you ever try to restrict us again, we will leave and never return. Kilnara stood and bowed deeply, lower than she had bowed to anyone in 600 years. Understood and agreed. Please, take the time you need to decide. We will wait. The meeting ended, and the council delegation was given quarters to rest. That night, Kilnara stood at a viewport looking out at human space. Watching ships move in peaceful patterns, she had come begging for help and been shown exactly what the council had thrown away. She could only hope that humanity's better nature would bring them back. Because the council had nothing left but hope. 2 years after the departure, Ambassador Jiwon Kim stood before the Human Congress in the capital city of Nova Seoul. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from every human colony and settlement. They had gathered to vote on the most important question their young civilization had ever faced. Should they return to council space? The debate had raged for months. Every news channel, broadcast discussions, every citizen had an opinion. The human government had done something remarkable. They had asked everyone to vote, not just the politicians. This decision would affect all humanity, so all humanity would decide. Jiwon had spent the past weeks traveling between human worlds, explaining the situation and listening to people's concerns. Now, she would make her final argument, and then the vote would happen. 2 years ago, we left council space Because we were not wanted. She began. The council feared our success and restricted our freedom. We could have fought. We could have protested. Instead, we chose dignity. We left quietly and built something beautiful here in our own space. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Now, the council asks us to return. They offer us everything we wanted before. Full membership, equal rights, complete sovereignty. They admit they were wrong. They need our help desperately. A representative from the colony world of New Busan stood. His name was Taejin Song. And he was known for speaking bluntly. Why should we help them? They threw us away like garbage. Let them solve their own problems. Many in the chamber nodded agreement. Ji-won had expected this. The anger was understandable and, in many ways, justified. That is one choice, Ji-won acknowledged. We could stay here, safe and prosperous. We owe the council nothing. They made their decision, and they must live with the consequences. She walked to the center of the chamber floor. But I want you to think about the people suffering in council space right now. The miners on Kepler 442b, who are being raided by pirates. The sick children waiting for medicine that never arrives. The farmers watching their crops fail. The ordinary people who never voted to restrict us, who never feared us, who only knew us as helpers and friends. Another representative stood. Her name was Eunji Park, and she had been a doctor in council space. I treated thousands of alien patients. I saved lives every day. When I left, I cried because I knew those people would suffer without proper medical care. But the council made it clear, they didn't want me there. The council leadership didn't want you, Ji-won corrected gently. But what about your patients? Did they reject you? Yoonji's expression softened. No. They thanked me. Some cried when I left. The ordinary people never wanted us to go. This was the heart of the matter, and Ji-won knew it. The council government had made a mistake. But billions of innocent people were paying the price. The question was whether humanity would punish those people for their leaders' errors. Captain Hyun Park stood to speak. He was retired now, but his voice still carried authority. I protected mining colonies for 30 years. I knew every family, every child. When we left, I felt like I was abandoning them. But we had no choice. The council ordered us to go. He looked around the chamber. Now we have a choice. We can let pride keep us away, or we can do what we've always done. Help people who need it. The council doesn't deserve our help, but the people suffering under their poor leadership do. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that returning would make humanity look weak, that it would teach the council they could treat humans badly and still get help later. Others argued that abandoning the galaxy was against everything humanity stood for. Finally, Counselor Sora Yoon was invited to speak. She was not human, but had been raised partly on Earth after humans saved her species from extinction. She had special permission to address the Congress. I watched humans for 20 years, she said. I learned your languages, studied your history, tried to understand what makes you different, and I found the answer. You believe that the ability to help creates a responsibility to help. This is not universal in the galaxy. Most species help only their own kind, only when it benefits them. Rating. She paused. Humans help strangers. You help people who cannot repay you. You help people who don't even like you. This is your strength and your weakness. The council exploited this nature and then feared it. But if you abandon this nature to avoid being exploited again, you will lose what makes you special. Her words hung in the air. Ji-won saw many representatives nodding thoughtfully. Sora had touched on something important. Humanity's identity was built on compassion and service. If they abandoned the galaxy out of spite, they would become something different, something lesser. Dr. Mira Choi stood to speak. I have a proposal. We return to council space, but we do it our way. We don't work for the council government. We work for the people directly. We provide humanitarian aid, medical services, infrastructure repair, all the things we did before. But we do it through our own organizations, under our own authority. The council can have us as partners, not as subjects. This sparked new discussion. The idea had merit. Humans could help without submitting to council authority. They could maintain their dignity while still serving those in need. Jiwan let the debate continue for another hour, then called for silence. The time has come to vote. Every citizen has cast their ballot. The results are being counted now. Whatever the outcome, we will abide by it together. The chamber fell silent as the vote totals appeared on the main screen. The numbers climbed steadily. Millions of votes were being tallied. Finally, the total stabilized. 72% of humanity voted to return to council space. The decision was clear. Humanity would go back, but they would go back on their own terms, as equals and helpers, not as subordinates. Jiwan felt relief and pride. Her people had chosen compassion over pride, service over safety. 3 months later, the first human ships returned to council space. They were not military vessels but hospital ships, cargo freighters, and engineering transports. Dr. Mira Choi led a fleet of medical teams to the plague-stricken worlds. Within weeks, the plague was contained. Within months, it was eliminated. Human engineers spread across council space, repairing infrastructure and training local workers. This time, they insisted on teaching everything they knew. No more quiet maintenance that no one understood. Every repair came with a training session. Every system came with detailed documentation in multiple languages. Human merchants resumed trade, but they did it differently. They formed cooperatives with alien traders, sharing knowledge and profits. They taught logistics and supply chain management to anyone who wanted to learn. The economy began to recover. Captain Hyun Park came out of retirement to lead a peacekeeping force. His ships protected trade routes and mediated disputes. But this time, he worked alongside alien security forces, training them and sharing intelligence. The pirate attacks decreased dramatically. The signing ceremony happened on neutral ground, a space station built jointly by humans and the Council. High Arbiter Keel Nara and Ambassador Jiwon Kim stood together before representatives from every council species. Today we correct a grave mistake, Kilnara said. We welcome humanity not as subordinates but as full partners in the Galactic Council. We grant them all rights and privileges, including veto power over council decisions. We do this not out of obligation, but out of recognition that humanity represents the best of what civilization can be. Jiwan stepped forward. Humanity accepts this partnership with one condition. We serve the people of the galaxy, not governments or power structures. Our help is freely given and cannot be commanded. We are partners, not servants. We are equals, not subjects. She paused and looked directly at the assembled counselors. And understand this clearly. We didn't leave because we were weak. We left because we refused to beg for respect. Now we return as partners. Or we don't return at all. The council agreed unanimously. The treaty was signed. Humanity was back. Councillor Vex's Thor had resigned in disgrace, finally admitting his mistake. Before he left office, he did one honorable thing. He proposed that the anniversary of humanity's departure be made a galactic holiday. He called it Humility Day. A day to remember that those who serve quietly often hold everything together, and that fear and pride can blind even the wisest to their greatest allies. The proposal passed. Every year now, across 43 species and thousands of worlds, people pause to remember the day the humans left silently. They remember how the galaxy fell apart without them. They remember the lesson. Strength without wisdom is useless, and those who leave gracefully often return more powerful than before. 50 years later, human council cooperation had created a golden age. New technologies emerged from combined research. Trade flourished. Conflicts decreased. Medical advances extended lifespans across multiple species. The galaxy thrived. In the human capital of Nova Sol, a monument stood in the central square. It was a simple structure, just a mirror that reflected the sky. Engraved at its base were words that every human child learned. We help not for power, but because it is right. We serve not for recognition, but because we are able. We are strong not when we dominate, but when we lift others. This is humanity. We will ever. We help not for power, and across the galaxy, on worlds of every kind, similar monuments had been built by grateful people who had learned what it meant to lose humanity's help and gained wisdom from that loss. The Council had made a mistake. The galaxy had suffered. But in the end, both humanity and the Council had become better for it. The humans had learned their worth. The Council had learned humility, and together, they built a civilization that would endure for millennia, all because humans had the courage to leave when disrespected and the compassion to return when needed. That, in the end, was the most human thing of all.